Greetings. Some more work on the third illustration. So the carriers is going to be broken up into three parts. The first part, its primary purpose is just to explain the processes of living in the catacombs in the compound, and to define the four major localities that exist in this world. You have the compound, or the catacombs. You have the outer wastes, or the far wastes, which is a large source of the rare raw materials that the compound uses. There's no manufacturing, so whatever they find, they can manage to utilize to some extent. If, say, a chunk of steel is too big, it will be used as a piece of construction, a wall or a roof or a ceiling of some sort, but it won't be used for anything else. It won't be broken down into smaller parts to be used into making any kind of tools. There is no tools being made. Whatever they use is whatever they find. And then there's a place called the Click Farm. It's an area of radiation, and these fellows, they have no idea what radiation is. It's an indication of what the world had happened, or what had happened to the world. But they have, again, they don't even have a basic understanding of historical precedent to know that the world came to an end. The concept of the end is beyond their reach. They're essentially children, fully grown and fully formed, but mentally they're essentially children. The Click Farm is a place of punishment, though, if someone is found to have broken the rules of burden. And everyone in the catacombs and in the compound, they are all expected to break the rules of burden to some extent, but egregious, huge violations of the rules of burden, people are sent to the Click Farm. Because long exposure to the Click Farm causes significant degradation and eventual death. So you have the far wastes and the Click Farm. The compound. Then you have the processing plant. Now, obviously, it's been mentioned that there's no manufacturing, there's no industry. So the processing plant alludes to some form of manufacture, some form of industrial process. This is somewhat the case but generally speaking, it's not. And our heroes, the main figures in the progression of the story, the figures that move from point to point to point throughout the story, even they don't know what really exists and what really goes on in the processing plant. What they do know is the insects that they collect in the catacombs and for their games and for their food mostly come from the processing plant, as well as their food, which comprises mostly of insects. And the basic storyline is our team of heroes. They're employed to take two deceased members of the compound to the processing plant so they could get properly processed. And drawing the line between taking corpses to the processing plant and the processing plant being a place of food production. There is a clear callback to a scene in the movie Waterworld where the deceased are dropped into a cesspool where the organic materials are broken down into fertilizers. Anyway, when our heroes reach the processing plant, they're supposed to drop the deceased individual off and then be on their way. That's not the reason why they're called the carriers, because that's one of the biggest things in the story, is that there's not supposed to be an elite or a group of individuals that stand out apart from the regular swim of humanity, and there is, and that they're the carriers. They carry water from the compound to the processing plant, because there's a well of fresh water that's brought up from the chasms and the cisterns underneath the catacombs, and it draws up the water into these glass bottles, and these carriers, they have to carry these water bottles to the processing plant. And that could be an indication, implied or otherwise, that an awful lot of totalitarianism is enforced upon the masses by allowing the masses to have meaningless drudgery, meaningless work that takes up all of their free time and exhausts them, so they can't do anything else other than recover from the meaningless tasks that they have to do on a daily basis. Because obviously, there are so many other ways to transport water from point A to point B. Why do it the hardest way possible? And that's something of a point that these individuals, these carriers, they don't question it, because they don't know enough that it's not something that they should question. Why would they question it? It's always been this way, and it's always going to be this way, so why would they bother in any kind of questioning of authority, as it were? If that makes any sense. So anyway, thank you for watching.